Glad to see you. Getting our stream ready here. Welcome, welcome. Hi to everyone. Many people all over. Very glad to see you. Hey, welcome, Marianne. You're the first time today. Really glad that you came. We have a lot to talk about. Oh boy, so last time we talked, we covered quite a few things, but I was alluding to me getting some clarity over this month for all of us and being able to talk about what's happening at a pretty intense level. So let's get into it because I have a lot to share. And, today we're welcoming a pretty large coronal mass ejection from the sun, and there's two in a row. And so it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a geomagnetic storm tonight if you're on the western side of the world, and during the day, of course, in the eastern side. But let's talk about that. What does that mean? Is that something that can be useful to you? It certainly is. And I want to describe this to you so you can utilize this, because what's happening in the next few years will be much larger than what we've witnessed and much more intense for the planet. So let's build up to that. In the meantime, I want to describe to you energetically what's happening. Right now, we're in a merger of light and dark. We're at the end of an age. It's a 12,000-year cycle. And this cycle is often split by 6,000 years. But the 12,000-year cycle often is denoted by several factors galactically, and we're talking about physics. So I'm repeating information that you can go and discover for yourself. My favorite scientist in this matter, his name is Ben Davidson, and he runs the YouTube channel Suspicious Observers. So I highly recommend listening to his movies so you can get up to date about these cycles, and that they're actually physics level, scientific level, measurable cycles. And we're going to balance both because we're doing science and spirituality. So let's talk about how that works. But this merger of light and dark is unlike anything that's ever happened before. There are more people on the planet than at any turn of any age. That means that, like the end of most ages, there's going to be an immense amount of death that will occur. And many of us are very afraid of death. This is a slavery program that we've been set up to use to get by, right? In a very sick and twisted system that doesn't treat humans as the divine, incredible beings that we are. Very few of us were taught to appreciate our bodies for what they are. These are incredible technologies that are extremely difficult to attain. Your body and your DNA is technology. And it was made many, many eons ago, not on this planet. It's incredibly important that we protect it. This is why we have so many species from all over this galaxy and beyond and other dimensions interested in us. This is why the modification of DNA has been an obsessive issue for the elite. This is why longevity has been a serious concern. Human beings used to live much, much longer, and they were much larger at the beginning of our experiment in human consciousness here. And over time, with the lack of purity of mind and purity of spirit, the continued corruption through specifically shame, this shortened our lives. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means that these coronal mass ejections, the light from the sun, the light from within, and don't forget that you are a living bioluminescent being. You create photons. This is a fact. Every time an electron moves in a shell around an atom, of which your body is made of many trillions upon trillions of insane amounts of atoms, right? It releases a photon. A photon is light. You're constantly creating light. What can you do to purify your DNA, get it into better shape? What can you do to access your divine memory, not just the memory that you have of this life, but many others, because you are an immortal being. You come from source. There is no death. It's only transformation. Only transformation exists. And that's really key for us to work on right now. What can you do to elongate your life? If any of those three things interest you, then I have an answer for you. Work on your trauma. In the description below, and some of you have had trouble with finding the description, on the YouTube video after the live today, there's a little arrow, a little teeny weeny arrow up to on the bottom of the video part. There's a little bitty arrow at the upper right hand side, so it'll be like right here. And if you touch it, it'll open up the description. And there's 2 files there, free for you to share and to enjoy as you wish. The first file is physical preparedness. It's a huge compilation, a body of work that my father and I put together on your behalf to help you understand preparedness, which you're going to want very much. As the sun changes happen, our infrastructure is going to change. And you're going to want that. And furthermore, as continued shortages and this huge shift of consciousness off the planet occurs, you're going to really want that for your family and to continue to prepare. This is not to scare you. There's nothing to be afraid of. It seems really scary, but when we feel that fear, what it's doing is it's showing us our trauma. And the second file is going to help you to elongate your life. It's going to help you to clean up your DNA so you can remember who you are and why you came. And it's going to help many factors of your health as well. So I've described many reasons why emotional processing, shifting your trauma, is number 1. It needs to be top on your list of things to do every day. And I've given you lots of different ways to do it. There's more than one way to heal trauma. And so that file, use it as you wish, share it as you would like, so that you can do these things for yourself, but also for all consciousness, right? Some of you are motivated by service, and some of you are motivated through self-inquiry. And we want to balance these out. But the working on your trauma is going to help to balance out the service to consciousness and the service to and self-inquiry, right? And we're not doing, of course, service to self at the expense of others by healing our trauma. So think about that. If you're more apt to work on this because you know it's going to help all humanity, and you're less apt to help yourself, there's worthlessness issues there, and that's trauma, and then you can work on that. And you'll find the beauty of balancing self-inquiry with service to consciousness. And so have no doubt that the electromagnetic auric field that you create physically with your heart has a deep and intimate connection to all of the people on this planet, all places, all things, all dimensions. This is another measurable fact. So let's talk about the sun. We're coming today, later today, perhaps tonight, with these coronal mass ejections, 2 in a row. And it's more dramatic now than normal. The reason being the electromagnetic field of the Earth is weakening. Now, in an esoteric sense, the Earth's field is going internal. And when we go into self-inquiry to do these mergers, right, there's a merging of light and dark occurring. At the end of many of the ages, we've seen that merger often turned into dark overrunning the light for some time. That's why we lived in the patriarchy and the matrix for so long. But I have good news. The best news I could give you. The light has already won. The light has already overcome the dark. The reason being is that there's been many mystics who have been working diligently, often in private, to examine the darkness through self-inquiry, to examine the hearts of darkness that are on this planet and beyond. And what have we found? Well, I'll give you the short report. I happen to be one of those people. And so are many of the people I work with. The report is all darkness is light under pressure. And when you discover that light, you can draw it out. And what it does is it explodes through a massive amount of release. That's why the revealing of very troubled events that have happened in this past month, which have been extremely painful, the blinding clarity is creating a release. It's an emotional release as well. And so, for example, what happened in Afghanistan caused a massive emotional lamenting release. That's because there was a lot of darkness under pressure. It's been revealed what's really happened. There's more clarity. And that's just one of these events. There's many, 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 and many of you personally are experiencing these events. I myself included. I would say that most of us are experiencing our worst fears arising for us to look at. Whether they've occurred or not, they're rising up for you to look at. All of your worst fears. And so we need to look at them because they are full of power. They're under pressure. As this light from the sun continues to come through the weakened electromagnetic field, the field that is going internal, the self-inquiry of the earth herself, it's been a measurable trajectory. And it began to be notably weakening from the year 2000. And as it has been going internal, we have been able to actually compare year by year, the opening, the actual literal and very measurable exponential opening of dimensions. This is why things seem so weird and why they've just been getting weirder. And as time has gone by, it's not letting up. And furthermore, the changes have been going faster. Where we might have one big breakthrough each quarter, now we're having big, huge, holy cow breakthroughs every week. My body's suffering from it. I'm really sore today. I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sore because there's so much processing happening. So this is what's key for us to notice. And so you're not crazy. All this is real. It's very real. But it's so cool. These two measurable maps, the mystics tracking the opening of the dimensions, and at the same time, the internal field becoming more and more internal of the earth. We can literally track it. The planet is offering us something incredible. She's reminding us of what we are capable of. These bodies are just like the planet. We are capable of being in and accessing all dimensions at once. This is what we are capable of, my friends. This is why DNA is something that everyone in this galaxy and beyond and in many dimensions wants a part of. This is why the modification of DNA, the obsessive control of it, has been happening. Because it's so special. When DNA was first created and the first soul entered into the first body, there was a massive explosion of power that could be tracked across this universe. And indeed, many of the beings we interface with have come in order to seek out that power. And so it's up to us. We are the caretakers of this. But it's really important for us to, of course, with great graciousness, require that the beings that utilize this have the intent to elevate all consciousness and service, not to use it in service to self at the expense of others. And that's what's been going on. That's the crux of the war here. We're at the last war. We're in it. We're in the middle of it. You are in the middle of the last war. It is a global war. It's already World War III, and it has been for a while. It's an unconventional war. And so this kind of issue is right in our face now. It's extremely clear. And therefore, what is going on with corruption and darkness is becoming more and more clear too. Now, it can be really easy to lose hope. My friends, drop this. Drop it. You are source. You're from source. Source is living through you. Enjoy every moment the best you can. Stop worrying about the future. If the people around you transition to transform and come back later if they would like, then they will. Don't worry about them. You're going to miss them, sure, if you stay in this body, yeah. But this is the key. I follow Tantric Buddhism very deeply. It's what I've been trained in over the past decade. And hope is something that creates suffering because it continues to cause more and more attachment. And while you know I'm a cheerleader for humanity, I want you to really enjoy being human the very best that you can without suffering. This is a great challenge to do right now. The suffering around us is immense. We can acknowledge this. But if we ourselves choose to allow the light of source to merge with the light of source in all things, source is in all things, enlightenment is in all things, and they can merge, this elevates consciousness. It alleviates suffering. If you want to help the world stop suffering, let yourself be the powerful source being of enlightenment. That's who you are. I'm talking to all of you, and you are me. We are one. This is not something that is merely esoteric. It is not just metaphysical. It is not just religious or spiritual. We're talking about a source field that is mathematical, that is real and measurable. Furthermore, oppression is real, right? I want to tell you what happened to me. The other night, I went to a special ceremony of only women, and I was kind of dipping in to check on how the divine feminine is doing. And all the women that showed up there were representative of different facets of the female and different facets of the divine feminine, right? One of the women there was possessed. And I'm very grateful that I was there because I can see it very clearly. And through the night, it became more and more clear to everyone that this poor woman was possessed. And we had an interface with a demonic entity. And it proved to everyone there that she was actually truly possessed, that this is a real thing. There are people who end up in such suffering that they become so weak and powerless and they forget who they are, that they end up controlled by these types of things. This is real. It's not just something out of a storybook. It's not just something out of a myth. It's happening around us. And I interfaced with this being, encouraging it to leave this person's body, but doing it safely. It's dangerous to deal with these kinds of beings. They really don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to be healthy. They want to have control. Now, this possession has been in place for so long that unfortunately we weren't able to fully help her to be free. But now she has support. Now all of her friends know what's going on. And the real version of this beautiful soul can be drawn out. She needs help. She needs prayer. She needs support. And so do all the people suffering around you. But it's very tiring, isn't it? It's very tiring. So focus inward on yourself. Go into self-inquiry now. It's not too late. It's not too late to open up the light inside of you. And it can connect and be rejuvenated by the sun. Coronal mass ejections do some weird stuff to people. Over the next few days, we're probably going to see earthquakes. We'll probably see, because there's an electromagnetic connection that happens with these ejections. We're probably going to see people acting really weird. A lot of people describe feeling sick and dizzy and tired, sore, grumpy. So it really does have a dramatic effect on us. But if we're conscious of this, we can actually use this light. So let me show you a really new, awesome sort of method that I've been noticing. You can imagine yourself in a beautiful glass sphere, a crystal sphere. It doesn't have any facets, so it's very smooth. It's perfect sphere. Now, if we had a giant sphere the size of your body or bigger, it would be quite dangerous. There have been spheres like this in the past, and they were used for healing, but they were also used as weapons because they turn into basically like laser beams, right? Even the smallest amount of light in a glass sphere like that can magnify it so much, it becomes really powerful. But if you imagine yourself in this glass sphere, just using it from the fourth dimension, which is the imagination. So we're using the dimensions, and you can use it anytime. You just have to use your imagination. Those of you who have trouble with imagining, just feel it. Feel it. Feeling is a type of seeing, right? So if we imagine this, it feels kind of nice and comfortable, but let it be very clear. Allow light from Earth, light from the sun, light from coronal mass ejections, light from people, light from the moon, light from your cat, light from your cup of coffee, right? And so, this light is everywhere. And we can allow this light to move through us. And when it does, you want your heart chakra, right, to be the very center of the sphere. And what does it do? It's going to open up all frequencies. But the frequencies available to you are qualities of light. So in the rainbow, when we look at a color, we're actually looking at a wavelength, which is also a sound. Isn't that amazing? And it coordinates and collaborates with the elements. So this is why when we can look at a planet far, far away, we can tell what kinds of elements this planet has. We can tell if it has water because we'll see very specific wavelengths of light, but they are also frequencies. This is how cool and amazing and mysterious this universe is. And so then you have them all available to you. But my friends, it's not just fun, awesome light. It's also what we might call lower frequencies. They're all available to you, and they are all equal in importance and power for your continued wisdom. When you feel sad, when you're afraid, when you're fearing death, when you're afraid for your family members, when you are afraid for this planet, all of these are frequencies that you're learning from. In the Grand Library, which is immensely in equanimity, it's a circular library of consciousness. All frequencies are equal to one another in their wisdom. This idea for us to resist and deny the pain of certain frequencies and to try to run away and say, I only want higher frequency. You're missing an entire half of the library of consciousness. You're missing the point. The point is for you to be neutral, the center of the sphere, the center of the library, from whence relatively you can choose any frequency you want. I choose to be neutral. I choose to be Source, who loves all frequencies. Let this be your mantra. It does not mean that you are going to not take part in revolution, but you can do revolution by being neutral and standing in your power. And when you merge with frequencies that are uncomfortable, they inform you and they lose power over you. When you merge with frequencies that are comfortable to you, they inform you and you stop being so attached to them. This is how we can function from higher consciousness. Let the light from coronal mass ejections serve to elevate your inquiry. Let it move through you so that it can reveal to you more and more trauma and structure and different problems, right, that you're facing. And when you go into a problem, understand that what you are experiencing is frequency. It cannot destroy you. There is no destruction. It is only transformation. There is no annihilation. It is only ever transformation, only ever the completion of going home. Home to Source. And you can be home now. You don't have to wait. You are home. It's in you. So, as the dimensions have opened up, the 12 dimensions are available. They make themselves very clear. Stillness of the 12th dimension is available to you now. But we're not fully embodied of it yet. A lot of us have a lot more work to do to embody the dimensions and get access to what our bodies are capable of doing, which is being creator beings of the very highest degree. And so this coronal mass ejection is really only going to be a small being in comparison to the one that will be occurring in the next 3 to 6 years. It happens every 12,000 years, and it has all sorts of dramatic effects. The water underneath the mantle of the earth, which is 3 to 4 times as much water as is on the surface of the earth, will often rise up. This is why in the story of Noah, it described the water rising up from the middle of the earth, not just raining down. And that's why the flood was so immense and global. It's because of that. It was at the turn of that age that Noah realized and was given clarity by the source field that, of course, this was going to occur, so he prepared for it. So be prepared. There's nothing to fear. Be prepared. This is why the flooding is happening. This is why the fires are happening. The earth is cleansing her embodiment. We stopped listening to her. We stopped asking her permission and her advice about when, where, and how to build. She's reminding us why that's so important. The ancient buildings of the people who actually listened to that are still standing. And the buildings of the people who haven't been for so long, they're not going to stand. This is why we are having so many more strange storms, crazy lightning, you name it. Go look at Ben Davidson's YouTube channel and learn about this. You'll see that this is a real thing, that this is happening because of the end of the age. And by golly, you signed up for it. You're here to be able to be part of the human race who's going to transition into something new. We're going to use this light. The vision I've had for a long, long time is that those of you who are awake about this and working in self-inquiry, it's never exactly perfect. There's no such thing as perfect self-inquiry. But those of us who are working on it, right, we create a special network that I call the real internet or Indra's net. And this real internet, what does it do? Well, it creates a powerful electromagnetic field. And in full consciousness, we're going to be able to help support and protect our planet. We get to do that. And by doing so, it will cause what's called a punctuated equilibrium event. And this event is an evolutionary event. This evolutionary event will cause us to become a new species. Me, in this body, becoming not Homo sapien, but something else. You as well. And what is this species? Homo luminous, the human of light. It's those beings, those of you who will rebuild this planet in your awakening. By listening to the earth again, remembering how to ask permission when, where, how, and exactly how to build and rebuild our planet. New Earth is not going to be something you get to gently step into, my friends. New Earth comes from the inside out. This is revolution at the greatest scale of consciousness. And so be prepared. Know how to navigate this. And you will be able to. You'll elevate the people around you with great love, compassion, and the rules of consent. And no longer will we suffer with demonic possession. No longer will we suffer with abduction. No longer will we suffer with oppression from our own species and others. It is our divine path. It is the Dharma. The Dharma means that it is inevitable. The light has won. I'm being extra firm this month because I'm seeing this merger happen and it's dramatic. And we have to use all of our tools. It's now. This is not a drill. All the tools that we came in with, all the skills need to be used now. You're going to be tested. You are being tested. So, you as a divine being, you've come. You've come at the end of this age, the most immense change that's ever occurred on this planet. All the other ages and the changes that have happened before this will be tiny in comparison. You might remember Atlantis, but this will be a global level. You might remember the fall of Egypt. You might remember the fall of Lemuria even. That is tiny in comparison. This is the greatest change that we've ever been through, and you are helping to create it. It's your consciousness that can elevate all. One person working towards enlightenment elevates an entire city, an entire country. One person in meditation and stillness activates and allows source to exist in all things and draws source out. One person willing to be compassionate, willing to be loving, makes a difference. It makes a difference because it was meant to. It's inevitable. Trust that. You don't need a dynamic of hope or despair. Trust the inevitable. That source is lifting human consciousness up. It is moving through you. It's inevitable. So why worry? It's inevitable for these changes to occur. Don't panic. There's nothing to worry about. Enjoy. Enjoy each moment. Enjoy the internet while it's still on. Coronal mass ejections and geomagnetic storms destroy electronics. So it may not be that we have this internet that we'll have to learn, and learn now. There's no reason not to. In fact, I think it's vital for us to learn how to connect to one another. And today's pillar of light that we will build at the end of our time together is going to be for that, to encourage all of humanity to reconnect to the real internet. Everything else and all the other technology that many of you are concerned about is nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing in comparison to what you can do with your consciousness. You are in one of the greatest technological creations ever made in this universe, a human body. Your DNA is a transmitter receiver of the greatest caliber. Your body has access to all 12 dimensions all at once, and the memory of all of your ancestors. That's how amazing you are. And if you are not sure about the exponential power, then try this out. Meditate every day, pray every day, work on your trauma, do it a little every day, and witness the changes in the people around you. If you aren't sure about your own benchmarks, then use the beautiful humans around you and the beautiful animals around you as your benchmarks. Eventually, you're going to have to drop that, but it's a good way to start to convince your brain mind, who's blocking you in believing all of this and actually living it and practicing it, to convince your brain mind that this is real. If your family is usually fussy and fighting and grumpy and having a hard time, not healthy, work on yourself. Don't worry about them. They chose to be around you for a reason. My family chose me for a reason because I'm capable of elevating consciousness. And so therefore, they found that being with me and my family, being with that has helped them evolve. And they're conscious of it now. And they have helped me evolve as they change and they become more light. It supports consciousness through me because we are source working together. You are an essence of source. You are one of the frequencies of existence. There's only one version of you, but You are part of an incredible, immense facet, a crystalline facet of consciousness, a multidimensional consciousness. That's the Indra's net. The people around you are not a coincidence. They're not just because you met your husband at the bar a long time ago. That's not why. You met because of electromagnetics, because of source, because of the inevitable, because of light, because you are here together to do this work together. So if your spouse or partner isn't on board, then make some clear ultimatums and say, hey, I want you to get off the video games. I want you to get off the internet. I want to be together. It's necessary. I want to try to meditate together. I want to try new things. I want to do self-inquiry. Give them that opportunity. Set them up for success. And of course, allow them their own path. Many of our beautiful family members are choosing pretty crazy paths that our ego would say is wrong. But it's not. It's that they're learning. The young woman that I saw possessed, she's learning. She needed to come in and learn about this. But you know what's happened? All the people around her are learning from this too, and learning to support her beautiful soul to be free. Her soul has actually done her a favor by surrounding her in friends who care about this and who can see it and who acknowledge it. So this is where we're at, my friends. The electromagnetic field of the planet is in deep self-inquiry, opening the dimensions on the behalf of all beings and all creatures in all places on the earth. The sun is doing what it must do. It has to release itself of power and energy as the galaxy continues to live its cycle out. And remember to use relative thinking. All answers are available to you. Put yourself in the center of the library, the center of knowledge and wisdom. Drop the linear thinking. It's much quicker to have access to all available consciousness as you center yourself as part of source. Then you have access to all answers and all possibilities. And don't resist. When something bad happens, don't resist it. Let it move through you. It doesn't mean that you won't feel it. It means that it won't bother you, that it won't cause you to suffer because it won't have anything to connect to. It won't have any trauma structure to ping. That's what we call it in mysticism. When someone reacts, their structure, their egoic structure is being pinged. Source wouldn't react like that, right? Source is trying to help you to see the structure through you so that you can feel the structure. That's why when someone says something nasty to me, right, it hits me. If I have egoic reaction to it, I'm not worried about what they're saying. I'm looking at the structure, the reaction that I'm having. Oh, wow, this is really interesting. I have a structure here. I wonder what it is. Why am I reacting? I'm not remaining in neutrality when that's happening. So that means I have more work to do on this. So I go immediately into self-inquiry. How is it that this reaction is being pinged? What is the reaction exactly? What is the trauma or the ego here inside me? The other person's just source learning through all of that ego and trauma, and they happen to say something nasty, right? So I'm not worried about them. They're on their journey. I'm getting an opportunity to look at my structures and dissolve them so I can become more and more source. I can give more and more light out to this beautiful world, out to consciousness. That's how we're functioning now. And so this can be something you can track every day. If you read something in the news that disturbs you, notice your reaction. Notice how your mind might go on a little diatribe about how terrible that person is or how awful this situation is. It's called a spin. And then you're spinning in one or two different frequencies at that time, right? You're not staying in the center of the library. You get spun out into that frequency. So catch it and say, ooh, hey, mind, that's an interesting feeling. Where is it in my body? Where's this reaction? Is it in my throat? Is it in my head? Do I feel hot? Do I feel it here? Do I feel it in my gut or my hands or my toes? There's structure everywhere. It's pinging you. It's showing you where it is so you can shift it. And when you do, what happens to you? Your body becomes healthier. You're less apt to stress, which is the real killer of people, isn't it? You remember more about who you are. More light is available, more creative energy, less suffering. This is self-inquiry. This is how we will create new earth. This is how we'll rebuild our societies with compassionate listening and deep self-inquiry. We'll be able to solve problems faster. We'll be able to have new governance based on inquiry of the self, based on merit instead of money, based on trust instead of doublespeak and gaslighting. And so this is how it's going to unfold. I'm not telling you a future timeline that might happen. I'm telling you the inevitable. As many of you know, I don't really believe in timelines. They're all one. It's an ocean of time, and the inevitable is going to happen. But I'm not a future teller. That's what bad psychics do. I'm here to encourage you to be you, to be source. I'm your cheerleader, to remind you to love being human. Because you've been taught only how to hate yourself. You've been taught that resting is lazy. You've been taught that death is scary. You've been taught that self-inquiry is useless for changing the world. You've been taught all these things. These are programs. These are cultural conditions from cultures that are sick and crazy. Of course they are. That's okay. That's actually been necessary for our evolution. All of us can say, hey, I learned a lot from all the trauma that I've had. This is important. We're not throwing out all of the millions of years of evolution. We're standing on top of it. You got here because of that. Through all of the suffering, we have been elevated to this moment in time for us to talk about this right here, right now. Some of you are remembering who you are. And it's going to draw out a lot of worthlessness that you have been taught. A lot of that dynamic of arrogance, worthlessness. Some of you have been kings and queens in the past. Some of you have been incredible, powerful healers. Some of you have been immensely important teachers. Some of you have been enlightened. That is who you are. Being Elizabeth is a tiny grain of sand in the billions of experiences and lives that I've had. And in the healing of trauma and the meditation and the dedication to self-inquiry, I remember now. I remember who I am, and I can share it. it becomes more and more clear to me that that's who you are too. That you are an endlessly vital part of Source. And that the greatest deed that you could ever do is to trust, to allow the self to become annihilated fully so Source can be you 100%. And then in that sight, you will see very clearly that all things are Source. And then you're free. There's nothing more in the whole universe that I am here to do than to call you to freedom. That's why I call myself the human cheerleader. I cheer all the humans on. Whether they're way, way far into the dark, I cheer those guys on too. Those men and women in the darkness who only want power and control, I cheer them forward too. Not just you who show up here. I'm cheering all the dark evil folks too. That's how much I love humanity. I believe in us. I know what we're capable of. I remember what we're capable of. It's your turn to remember now. It's vital that you remember. When you do, there's things that happen to your body. My body becomes more clear. I can feel my awareness grow every day, pushing out to the edge of the universe. I feel less stress and anxiety and pain. When I get terrible news, I got some really bad news last night. When I got terrible news, I allowed it to move through me. I foresaw that it might occur, so I was prepared for it. But in that instance, it was very painful and it moved through me. It didn't attach to anything. And I could feel it move out and beyond me and connect to all the other people who have had bad news like that. And then there's compassion. There's less suffering. I've been crying this morning because I'm letting it move through me. There's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to resist. It all goes home to Source. And then I can bow to the inevitable. That I'm here to learn about this bad news. To fully embrace it 100%. Not to let it have power over me and crush me. But to merge with it. So that I can be informed of this level of pain. And therefore, merge with it so that Source merges with it. So that the light in that pain is available to all. That is the end of suffering. That's how I know that this work is working, is because I get this kind of news, and it's going to, of course, be proof to me whether or not I have continued my self-inquiry and diligence, whether I have done that continued work to that degree, and I have. And there's nothing for me to gloat about. It's something that's available in consciousness now that all of us can use. That's the act of service that you do when you do this inner work. So, recap. Lots of light coming through, lots of electromagnetic power coming through. The electromagnetic field of the earth is going into inquiry. It's weakening, opening up more dimensions. The consciousness of the planet is more immense than it ever has been in any type of history that we know of on this earth. This light is coming through. You don't want any trauma blocking you from receiving it. This light is powerful. It will transform you. It will literally cause your DNA to up level to a brand new species that's more capable of evolution in consciousness. That's why you're here. You came for this. Now, let's say you end up getting sick and leaving your body and transforming before all that happens. That's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. You will come back if you want to, or you'll go enjoy being part of Source and endless, beautiful light and power, grace. And if you choose that, then of course that elevates consciousness. If you choose to come back, we'll have all these nice brand new bodies ready for you. And that is what I have hope about. As our species changes, many people will not be able to handle it. They'll check out. It's happening right now, and it will continue. That happens at the end of every age. It's to be expected. Don't feel bad about it. Death is not death. It is simply transformation. They will come back if they're meant to. You will see them again. Either when you shift and you go home to Source, you'll be home with all beings that you've ever loved in all time. Or you'll be here and be able to be Homo luminous and experience that. We sure have worked pretty hard for it, I'd say. Haven't you? You've suffered a lot so that you could learn all these things. You've been through a lot of lifetimes working very hard at being lighter and lighter, better and better, more and more Source, right? Healthier and healthier. This is what we're here to do. So this month is my call to action. My call to say, inquire now. Heal your trauma now. Meditate and pray. Work diligently at this. Be prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And you can't go wrong. Use the resources I've given you. Share them. There might be some things in there that'll really click for people around you, and some that won't, and some that you're going to modify. Do it. There's nothing new under the sun around trauma healing. What I have available to you is built on many people's work that I worked with, that I've modified too. Modify the work. You have ability and permission to do that so that it'll work for you. There is no one size fits all. There is no one size fits all for health. There's no one size fits all for spiritual awakening. It's like the Buddhists say, there's 10,000, maybe we might say, 7 billion, 8 billion paths to enlightenment. You have yours, and you will do it alone. Self-inquiry is done alone. This is why codependence is a problem, isn't it? Makes it harder for us to do that alone. Create a special space where you can pray, meditate, and inquire, and heal your trauma. Make it your own. Purify it. Perhaps you like holy water. Perhaps you prefer incense. Make a beautiful place that can help you to focus on this. It's never too late. Make it your job. There might be a job that you get paid money, but make this your real job. Make this your career now. My career is to be an enlightened being. My career is to inquire into the self until I find only source. That is my career. You are New Earth. New Earth isn't something that you're going to step into. That's pre-made. There's no prefab New Earth. You are it. It's from here. And by golly, I think our planet will really like it when we get with it, won't it? She's been dealing with this transition and supporting it and supporting this whole experiment in consciousness the whole time. I think for her, it will be wonderful for her to reconnect to the beautiful, beloved humans that she loves so much. Nature and Earth love you. They love humanity. That's why we're having more and more nature consciousness available with these dimensional openings. Everybody's reporting having new interfaces with all kinds of things, new kinds of consciousness that have been hidden away, only accessible to those who were going really deep on those journeys. So here we are in this moment, and there is no suffering in our moment here. Only that beautiful, neutral, still space of pure light, the center of the library, and all of the perfection of this universe. So, I just taught 2 back-to-back classes that I think you might want. If you want to really dig into this and understand those dimensions so that you can embody them, you know, before you take any class from me or listen to me at all, know that I do still have an ego, right? And I run everything through my ego. We all do. So I'm working on that. That's really important to me that you know that. I'm not enlightened yet, right? So this is key that you're aware of that. But the 2 classes are navigating the dimensions. They're each 22 each. And so affordable, but they are really juicy. I've got really good feedback from them. People said that they really, really helped them understand more of what's going on in reality and how to work with it. The second class, I think, was my favorite because we talked about pitfalls in consciousness, right? And some of them are really tough, these questions. One of them that we covered was, why does God let bad things happen? That's a pitfall in consciousness, and you can find them in each dimension. When you're merging with it, these questions come up in consciousness. This is how cool this experiment is, man. It's miraculous. It's magical. It's beautiful. And there's a way out of that. There's a way out of that question. So if you want that answer and you want to dig into it, because it's a pretty good, deep, juicy answer, grab that class. There's the 2 back-to-back where I help you navigate and understand the 12 dimensions, and then I help you understand the pitfalls. And we talk about the beings that are in those dimensions too, and what wonderful things they can do for you, right? This is your legacy. You're human. You get access to all this stuff all at once. You're not going to leave the 3D. You're going to make your house bigger. It's going to be 12 rooms, not 3. It is 12 rooms. You just need to move the trauma out of the way so you can see the house and then fill it with light. And then you become light. So that's the act that we're doing from here in our self-inquiry. All right, so let's come into looking at some questions. I'm going to kind of scroll upwards. What questions are showing up for you? Billy's asking, I'm not sure how to pray. I don't even use words really, Billy. I like to pray/meditate. So I focus on source. I focus on a quality of light, the white light of enlightenment or the gold light of enlightenment. I focus on the core of light inside myself. I focus on asking to be one with God, right? So, if you have special prayers that you like, my mother is Catholic, so she really, really values the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the St. Michael prayer. These really help her to feel close to God. For me, I like to do it without words. I pray by focusing all of my mind, heart, and my whole being on that love, the love of God, the love of Source, the beautiful source field from whence we all come from and are still from. So play with that. See how that resonates with you, Billy. Very good. I'm just reading through our comments here, seeing if there's any questions that have popped up. So, some of you are asking around, some topics that I can't bring up because of censorship. So it's a real thing. It's very important. All I can do is say, do as much continued work to discover the truth of DNA as possible. All things can change DNA. My coffee. DNA is a transmitter receiver. Everything changes DNA. It does so through the epigenetic modifications that occur. Whatever you put into your body, whether it be through the form of light, food, injection, whatever, it changes DNA. Everything changes DNA. It can either make it more difficult for DNA to function. It can cause problems with epigenetics, which cause problems with methylation and continued work with your cellular function. It can do lots of different things. So you're going to want to understand that stress, for example, you're surrounded in for perhaps very angry, upset, mentally unstable folks, maybe at your workplace, maybe at home. That's actually going to change your DNA. It's going to make it harder for you to de-stress and therefore cause different kinds of mutations, all sorts of things. And so as we continue to surround ourselves in this act of self-inquiry, then that shifts the way that stress changes our DNA. When you do meditation, you focus in on the light within you. This changes DNA as well. It makes it easier for your DNA to not go through mutations that will cause you problems. Your DNA is constantly changing. It's informed by your environment, your thoughts, by frequency, by stress, by joy, by food, by medicine, by herbs, by injections. It doesn't matter. So let's get that really clear. What is DNA? It is a technology. It is very sensitive. Everything can change your DNA. What are you surrounding yourself in? What are you consuming? What are you putting into your body? These things change DNA. I want to be very solid on that. You are an ever-changing being. At no point in time do you remain the same, ever. We're changing DNA right now. That's how cool this is, isn't it? The more you are around people of light, the more you bring more light through you, the more you shift your trauma, the more you change your DNA. Everything changes it. So that's my stance. I encourage you to research that. Find more out about epigenetics. Find out about how DNA really changes. Find out about how it stores memory. It does. It has epigenetic memory from all of your ancestors. A lot of that was trauma. If you work on that, that's part of the information I've given you of how to do that, how to work on your ancestors' trauma. I literally work with DNA scientists. I'm telling you this as a scientific fact, not an esoteric one, okay? I work with epigenetic scientists and DNA scientists. I love that stuff. I like to understand and draw from as many different bodies of science as possible. I try to keep up with being as well read on every dynamic as possible. Everything from electromagnetics to galaxy information, cosmology, solar studies, the study of the planet, all kinds of things, geology, anthropology, DNA science, all of this. So that's something that I care a lot about. It all is affecting each other. To me, that's the study of reality from a particular dimension. And I study reality from all 12 dimensions. You are an ever-changing, constantly evolving being. That's the wonderful part about it. It doesn't matter how wild your body and sick your body might be right now. There is so much change that can happen in such a fast amount of time if you have the tools. So start with the tools I've given you. You're never the same, ever. Be willing to constantly change, to discover all facets of yourself until they dissolve into source. That's what enlightenment is. Diane says, I'm finding more every day. What I've known as a guidance for decades is now becoming a circle of real friends in the higher dimensions. I prefer them to many around me at this time. Very good. But Diane, just as all the people around you, you have a preference, right? As we work towards enlightenment, as we work towards becoming beings of pure light, you end your preference. You end your preferences and your desires. You end the things that you say that you don't like. So the work isn't necessarily with your guides, Diane, who you're going to have to understand are you as well. They are source and you are source. You are not separate from them. Right? And what are their agendas? Always ask your guides about their agendas. It'll surprise you. If they're not human, then their agenda is not a human agenda, which is fine. But just understand that, right? But this preference, to be with the guides versus the people around you, I want to point that out. Hey, this is where all the juicy stuff is. Your reactions to them are showing you what to dissolve so that you can become more light. And then end your preferences. That's what that pure neutrality at the center of the universal library is all about. No longer do you prefer joy over sadness or this person over that person. You merge with their light. You merge with the source within all things. And then there is an end to suffering. There's an end to you feeling annoyed by the people around you and preferring your guides. And you'll merge with all of them, finding that you, of course, were them all along, Diane. That's what you'll find. Daiki says, would you speak to how we can learn about navigating our human relationships by seeing these planetary and cosmic energies as a model that teaches us? Certainly, I think that if I were to say what's most important, it'd be the end of preference. Let me give you an example. I had a friend come to my house who most of you would not want to come to your house. He was an ex-Luciferian. And he was the very tippy top of the most powerful. He was globally known. He actually had a vision of the Virgin Mary. And he said that he had never felt someone with so much power. And he had never felt so much love. He didn't even know who she was. And this made him go deeply find out who this person was. And he ended up leaving that whole entire dynamic. And I want you to use your imagination because I don't want to describe too much stuff here, but think the worst of the worst type of person and then take it farther, right? So he looks exactly how you would imagine a person like that would look. And my mother is close friends with him, and she brought him to my house. And my husband's like, I'm not so sure I want this guy in our house. And I said, you know what? This is meant to be. There's something special here. Let me handle it. You don't have to worry about it. He was there for several days. And we did deep work discovering about how much each other knows about the darkness, right? He was so surprised because I knew things that he didn't even know. And in this knowledge, this expression of knowledge, there was a rapport, there was trust. I believe that there was a cycle occurring. And so that's how it's comparable. Everything is cycles. Your life, everything you're experiencing is a cycle. So this is really key. That is how this works. This cycle needed to come full circle for him to be faced with someone who was willing to show him true compassion. I drew the light out of this very damaged man. I found source in him and I drew it out. This is how it works. I compassionately listen. I give that love without preference. If I had been in a different point in my life, I would have preferred that guy just stay away from our whole family. But he was trying to work on himself. So I was given this beautiful chance at the right, perfect moment to draw the best light out of this being, to find myself in him. Find yourself in all beings and you will be free. Find yourself in all things and you will be free. Yourself being no self at all, but source. And at the end of his visit, he was unable to take very good care of his body because he was blind now. And he has diabetes, he can't walk very well. And no one had taken care of his feet for 6 months. So I washed his feet. And he asked me why I was doing that. And I said, I want to show you what it looks like to be loved so completely and so fully, without preference, without requiring you to be different than you are. I want to show you what this looks like, what it feels like to be loved. Because if I can do it for you, a man who we might say was one of the most evil men in the world, truly, if you had heard his stories, you would cry yourself to sleep, just like my husband did every night that he visited. And he was telling the truth. If I can love this being as my self-source, as the source of all things, then that big burst of power is available to the whole world, because we're going to have some serious compassion and love that we're going to need to share with some of the most evil people on this planet. They too are source. And when we draw it out of them, It crushes ego. It destroys evil. It unleashes the light that's been held under oppression and pressure that we've called darkness. That's the example I have for you. Be willing. Be willing to look at your preferences and dissolve them. They're keeping you separate from all that light and from all that peace and the end of suffering. So Kevin says, Lemuria and Atlantis had a similar opportunity to take that quantum leap, and so did Egypt, yeah. And they were going to do it collectively for evolution, and it didn't happen. And why? It didn't happen because of preference. People wanted control. There is no control. It's all an illusion. There's no such thing as having control. You are source. Everything is source. There's nothing to control. Be free. Be free. And then, and we will, I think, Kevin, we're going to. We will take that leap. Even if one person does it. Those empires, they were so caught up in the control and the power piece, But I think more people on this planet feel powerless now than they do feel powerful. They feel less in control than they do feel control. And we need to let that go too. Good. Yeah, some of you are, older soldiers, right? I love that. Older people of light, right? Who have carved the path out. I always love to bow to you all because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this work. You carved the path out so that I could be born in 1982 and support you. You did that. These are the cycles that work. I like to come at the end of every age being the younger one who can support everybody and nourish them and be the cheerleader and say, we can do it. Every time. I like to come in that way so that we can do this together. There you go, girl. Very good. Wow, Patricia's had some crazy stuff happen. She had an identity theft. Yeah, so look at that, look at how it made you feel, right? A trauma situation like that. One of our worst fears, right? I was warning everyone for a while now, this stuff's coming up. You need to examine it. This is like the bottom of the pot. We're like scraping the darkest, worst crap out of there, right? Examine how it made you feel. And then merge with the person who did that. Merge with all the energies available to you, and it's going to heighten your consciousness dramatically. That's how things are working, especially now. So Genevieve's wanting to connect more to source, and the techniques I love to share especially have to do with the heart space, right? So one thing you can do if you're feeling disconnected, right? A lot of people are feeling stressed, disconnected, confused, a lot of chaos. And energetically, psychically, it looks like static. It looks like TV static, right? And then you just feel weighed down. You just want to run away. You just want to sleep, right? So shift this. A lot of you are empaths, so you draw in a huge amount of energy, but the problem is that empaths think that they're supposed to find out what this energy is and why it's there. And that's not really your job. Your job is to act as like a giant vacuum of power that moves and shifts dense energy off the planet. My job is to identify stuff because that's what I do by seeing it, right? So I'm like the mirror. I'm an oracle, so I can see. And that helps me to help you identify things that you can't normally see very well. And hey, I can't see my own stuff very well, so I get help too to look at this stuff. It's really important to get help. I'm available to you and many others as well who are excellent seers. So that's really important to know that, hey, it's kind of hard to see your own self. My teacher always gets after me because it's like I'm looking at the poster, but I can't see the forest for the trees because it's so close to home, right? But, do a heart command, practice the heart command piece, and then it'll shift whatever's not yours. And then you'll suddenly be like, whoa, everything's so much clearer and brighter, and it'll physically be brighter. So here's how it works. So whenever or wherever you are, you can do this, and we can do it together now. So just notice your heart, envision or feel your field around you. It's very big. And for those of you who are empaths, your field is massive. That's why you feel so much. And so then we say, dear heart, please lift any energies that are not mine out of my body and field now. And take a big, deep breath. And you will probably feel a big shift, an opening, and everything will begin to be brighter. Now, if it doesn't seem like that, keep doing it and say it out loud. And make sure to take that deep breath because that's your enter button. It tells the body that this is safe. And so in this case, we don't need to replace this because it's not energy that you need to manage. It's other people's energies that are trying to be shifted off the planet. And so empaths' energy fields can push energy up, down, and out. And so this stuff, it comes into your field, not so you can find out about it, but so it can get your permission to move. So you empaths out there, you need to give permission for this stuff to move. Oh, I feel this despair coming in. Whoa, what is that? Normally you'd go run and hide, right? Don't do that. Say, all right, whatever this is, I give you permission to use my field to shift up, down, or out, right? Up, down, or out. And then it'll move quickly because it needed that permission to use the highway of your immense field. That's what the empaths are here to do. Not for you to sit and suffer in misery as you continue to be bombarded by a constant barrage of difficult energies. All of you are playing a very important role for consciousness. So you don't have to worry about where this stuff comes from. It's not for you to do that. That's my job, to identify things that get stuck and to tell people about how to shift that stuff on their own and empower them to do it. So I empower you to take your sovereign field back for yourself and shift anything that's not yours. Very good. I love this. So Leanne says, the thought of exploring my trauma is and was terrifying. But once I start, my soul and inner guides are infinitely supportive, understanding, and non-judgmental. Everything is lovingly explained. I find it also a great joy to work on my trauma. And I've had a lot in this life and other lives. And as I work on it, I find it so joyful and so powerful to pull these massive linchpins. And there's an expansiveness that happens. And as you get used to this, you'll actually be seeking out your own ego and trauma. So when I have a reaction, I immediately am excited because I have something big to shift. And when I do, my whole awareness field expands even more, and I get that much closer to being one with Source. And so trauma healing will become more enjoyable the more that you do it. I really hope that you will give that a try. So Janine is asking, what's the love of God feel like? Well, I would point out, Janine, that as my experience has become closer to understanding that love, as I felt being loved without judgment, being loved and my whole self as it was in that moment, feeling perfect, I realized that this being who was loving me was me. That's what it feels like, to suddenly become the one that loves all things and loves all creation and reality, that loves myself as perfect the way I am right now. That all my journey has been perfect without any judgment. That's what I've discovered. As I was gasping at how powerful the love from Source really is, I suddenly realized it was me all along. Meditate on that. Contemplate it. As you contemplate it, like a little flower, it will bloom, and the experience will be brought to you. That's how that works. So Michaela says, hey, I agree with the focus on trauma resolution. I had an awareness last night that the war between the angels and demons is actually us, not accepting our fallen aspects of ourselves. Very good. I think that's really important. And if you want to get out of the war between the two parts of that same species, angels and demons are the same species. They're from the seventh dimension. And that war has to do with sovereignty, the sovereignty of humans versus the slavery of humans. Now, I'm of the particular belief that angels and demons cannot incarnate as humans. That's not who they are. They are immortal and they live in a totally different dimension. They're alien. They don't have a human experience at all. And so, again, the war has to do with human beings being sovereign. The angels want to support that. They're trying to get their brethren off the planet because the brethren see us as really handy little, food makers, basically, for them. Our fear is food to them. And so they've oppressed us and they want to have control over us. But the angels, they want the opposite. So what do you do to get out of that war? Stand in your power. Recognize any time that you are an oppressor, that you might want control, right? Or that you might want to actually do things that would be at the expense of others, right? So you're exactly right. We can use that same polarity dynamic to self-inquire, well, how am I oppressing myself or oppressing anyone around me? How am I being overly controlling? How am I doing things at the expense of others? How can I stand more in my sovereign self and say, no, I am a part of Source. No, I am sovereign. No, the choices that I make are inevitably important for all consciousness. No one will make them for me. That's how we can use that dynamic that comes from that whole war that's been going on for ages. And it's really powerful. So you're right on track. I love that. So Magda says, I've been praying and asking guidance from ancestors, Mother Earth, etc. for many years for where to live and how to find a home. I have a daily spiritual practice. Do you have any guidance? Well, I think that's a challenging one because I have moved so many times. I've moved something like over 40 times and I'm not even 40. How about this, Magda? Why don't you focus in on Source, and instead of being concerned about where to live, Give up any control over that and set yourself up for success by handing yourself over to Source and saying, Source, I'm 100% willing to be wherever I am needed to be to fulfill the continued effort I am making to become more and more Source and less Magda. And then you will find your home. That's my advice to you. Okay, so running through more. Green Guy wants to know if there's any courses on telepathy. Well, I don't necessarily say telepathy, I say remote viewing. Because through remote viewing, we access the true internet, and then you can hear, smell, taste, etc., things from very far away or things in different dimensions. And so if you want that class, Green Guy, you can ask me, just email me at elizabeth@seerandscientist.com, and I will happily let you buy that class for $22. It's called Quantum Remote Viewing, and it'll give you access to all those skills that you're wanting, which is basically to connect to the whole source field so that you have access to whatever you need and information. And it will be very much included, that telepathy part. Very good. And just another hint, Green Guy, if you work on your trauma stuff, especially in a masculine body, you'll feel way more connected, and all that will just come online naturally. If you have a desire to learn it, that means that skill is available to you. So the more trauma you shift, the more you'll remember how to do things. And then you don't have to take a class because you'll remember. How cool. Very good. I like what Catherine's asking. She's asking about healing pods, and I've been asked that question before, repairing DNA, etc. You know, I think that you're going to have an open heart and mind, Catherine, for any healing to occur. So such things can't really be forced on anyone, right? That wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be respecting sovereignty. So if someone is in suffering and they're not willing to do something, or they're doing things that might be damaging to their DNA, Catherine, they're trying to learn. Don't take that away from them, right? Don't take it away. Folks who aren't fully awake right now, don't take that away from them. They're trying to learn. It's really important for them to understand all of that. It's source learning. Trust that. Trust source. If you don't trust their ego, then at least trust the source within them, right? You are them. You're not separate from them. But furthermore, besides quality whole foods, besides, using plants and food as your medicine, you have a med bed already. It's called the earth and the sun. You just need to put your body there. The more bare on the earth for the longest periods of time that you can, the better, because of negative ions that come and heal the body and relieve all sorts of ailments and pain. If you haven't seen the movie Grounding, I'd highly suggest that you watch that, because it's a scientifically based way of understanding how the earth is a medbed, but so is the sun, right? So the sun's part of it too. At the very peak of the day, all that nice bright UV ray, everybody thinks UV rays are bad, but in small doses, UV rays are very cleansing. Use that as your cleansing. You don't need ozone sprays and alcohol wipes. You need the sun, right? And then at the beginning of the day and the end of the day is the far infrared that comes from the sun. And far infrared has been proven without a doubt to regenerate the body. Everything you need is at your fingertips, my friends. We don't need extra special tech to help us access what's available to us already. And we don't need extra special tech to access dimensions either. The dimensions are already available to you. And then use that sphere of light. Let that light be available through you. Let it move through your heart out into your world so that you can be able to magnify light and understand how vital and important every frequency is to existence, even the tough ones, right? And then, of course, meditate. The more still your mind is, the more still your emotional body is, the more your body can regenerate and heal fast, including the brain. It's pretty amazing how this body really works. So Julie, she's pointing out a very clear piece here. You know, I said that I drew the light out of the dark man, but it was Source who did the drawing. Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Source wants to draw Source out. Source wants to be one all the time. That's the journey of being an individuated part of Source. We individuate, but as we journey in our experience, we realize that we are all one, right? So I'm not separate from that guy. And that's what I tried to show him by helping him and serving him, right? And by doing so, you know, even if I did it with a little ego, it was still really meant to be. That's the Source in me and the Source in him became one, and that compassion. And that's what's happening all the time. And you're right. The less we can think of it as ourselves doing it, the better. But my teacher called me out the other day because I was trying to be humble about something, because I'd done a session with somebody and I was trying to help them heal, right? And I said, well, I don't like taking responsibility for such healing, you know. Source did it. And she said, hang on a minute. Then you're going in to dismiss the power of that consciousness through you. So it's kind of tricky. There's a fine line. We don't want to do any false humility, which I think I was doing. And we certainly don't want to take credit for Source. So there's a middle ground. There's a neutralness there where this event occurred and these two versions of consciousness played out this event as beings that are really Source, and they experienced it as individuations, as Elizabeth and this other person, right? And that experience then helps to magnify the fact that we are all one, that we are Source, right? I like that. Good. So, keeping with our time here, someone's wanting to know a little bit about the third dimension. Haman says, is the trick to manifesting in the third dimension to place our conscious minds on the fourth dimension and use our lucid dreaming bodies to create the desired result at night when we sleep while we're hunting power? No, actually, I think it's easier to do because some people have a hard time doing lucid dreaming, right? And you're right, we use the fourth dimension, but you don't have to sleep to do that. It's just your imagination. That's the fourth dimension. And it's real. Everyone thinks the imagination isn't real. That was a program. It's a bad one. Drop it. So the fourth dimension, what we do is we envision the outcome we're seeking, right? And then we feel it. It feels really good. It feels good, right? We feel it. But the last part, so we got to use the whole body to do this. And you do this every day. You can do it all the time. I was envisioning this going well, right? Or maybe I envision a special event or a house that I want to manifest, perhaps a home like Magda needs, an item, a person. So I envision it right? We spend some time on it. How does it feel? How does it smell? How does it taste? How, really use all your senses. Again, if you have a hard time imagining, just feel it. And then you fully feel it. You got to feel how it feels for this to be manifest. But here's the last step that everybody always forgets because they read some stuff about abundance and then manifesting, and they always miss the last step. And all those books that they wrote about manifesting and abundance, they always miss this last step. And it just kills me because then nobody manifests stuff very well. The key, my friends, is to let it go. If you are able to imagine it and feel it, fully experience it the best that you can't maintain that. Your imagination is not new. You're not imagining anything new, ever. Source has imagined it already. You're just tapping into what's available. But here's the crazy part. Source is way more creative than you. You are a part of Source, and as you shift your personal self out of the way and you become Source, you'll see this and you'll feel what I'm talking about. Whoa, there is way more than this body can imagine, right? So we have to let it go. Otherwise, you are putting parameters on the manifest. Don't do that. You're trying to put Source in a box. So imagine the very best that you can, and then hand it off to Source and say, Source, do with this as you will. Do with me as you will. I surrender. I surrender. And I know that this will come forth and be more miraculous and more beautiful than I could have ever imagined, because my human body is not capable of imagining as much as you are, as much as you have. Source imagined you. That's how amazing this is. Hand it off. Release it. And what it will do is it will come back around. It'll come full circle in ways that you never imagined. Let me give you a really cool book to go look at, to play with this, okay? It's called E equals MC squared. It's by Pam Grout, Grout. It's a bunch of experiments in manifesting, and they are really fun, and they're very special, and they help you to trust the source that you are and the source field. And I really enjoyed all those experiments a lot. And it's not religious at all. I think that she understood that, hey, we need to understand these things in a Western logical way. So she did. Eventually, you're going to drop your logical ways and be more relative and relational. And that will occur the more that you meditate on the source inside of you, the more that you shift your preferences and trauma. And then manifesting is a lot easier because it's there available to you constantly. The other way to really boost your manifesting, right, and boost abundance is actually more like a conveyor belt. The more you put out there without expectation, the more comes back to you in glorious ways. So be very generous. Be very generous with your time, your energy. Ask Source to set you up with the exact right people, places, and things that need you. And be willing to be very generous without expecting. Expectation is a big block for us. Without expecting anything at all back. And you will receive more than you ever imagined. That's how that works. It's a literal law of nature. When you physically shift something, right? Time, energy, stuff, money, you physically give, you've made room to receive new things. It's physics. So abundance is physics. Manifesting is physics. And you must relieve yourself of the dream or imagining so that there's room for you to receive in ways that are probably better than what you could imagine. right? So let's give that a shot. Give it a try. See how it works for you. Very good. All right, just quickly going through more comments here. People are working with crystals. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, the crystal world is very, very powerful. Oh, I see what you mean, Claudio. That's because these are LEDs. Yeah, it makes like a weird distortion. Yeah, the lights are LEDs, so that's why. Very good. All right. Very beautiful comments here, and I'm sorry I can't answer every question today. Why don't we go ahead and do our pillar of light? There is this key piece, I think, that Katie's mentioning around boundaries, right? Yeah. How do you have boundaries while also shifting preference? Well, it's all about how you position yourself, Katie. So, boundaries are not necessarily preference, right? It's you knowing that, hey, when I continue to be around this person, place, or situation, I feel less and less part of source. So this isn't going to work for me becoming one with source. And that would be a boundary. And so we got to shift. It's hard to do. It's hard to do both but you need to process. You need to process and dissolve any reactions, right? Because if you tell somebody in your life, I don't want to continue this relationship, then they're going to see it as you putting a preference on them and they're going to react. And you may react to their reaction. So you need to process any charge, emotional charge, over your boundaries. And then you end preference, but you're still creating boundaries. I know that sounds awkward, but look at the resources I gave you around emotional processing, and you'll understand what I mean, that you can work on a charge, and then once it's not had full control over you anymore, it doesn't ping you so much anymore, you can take that action to create a boundary for yourself. And that will actually be a huge awakening for you and the other person. And you can do it in compassion. You don't have to be in reaction, even if they're angry or react really badly to your request, right? And that's how we do this mystically. That's how we navigate this. Because by golly, the personal self, it exists. And we're trying to shift it and become more the universal self. And the universal self, of course, accepts all things and all beings and in all perfection. But it is necessary, of course, in your trajectory to make boundaries so that you can attain that state on behalf of even the person you've told that you don't want to be around anymore. You're doing them a grand, wonderful favor energetically to elevate their consciousness too. It's actually an act of service to all people that you have boundaries. So use that as your mindset from here, okay? Good. All right. Let's do our pillar of light. And I'm super excited because I think you can guess where we're going to build it. We're going to build it in Afghanistan, in the middle of chaos. Are you ready? Let's go to the Kabul airport. It's time. It's time. All right, I want you to imagine it. You might have seen pictures of it. Let's go there. All of us, 150 people, and anyone else who are going to join us in listening to this later. Let's go to Afghanistan. We're going to the Kabul airport, right smack in the middle. Let's make it a really big pillar, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to urge all souls to be able to connect to the real internet? And that's a good question, Larry. No, I don't get preempted to talk about things in our community calls. I actually come in knowing very little, and I just start to speak, right? I try to get out of the way. I try to let source come through and not Elizabeth. And I'm not perfect at that yet. We're getting there. So no, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Every time we get together, I just show up. And then I move my personal self out of the way, and then a lot of beautiful visions and information come through that clearly is needed. And so I'm following your directive energetically, actually. I'm talking about what you need us to talk about. I can feel it and see it. And so that's how I work. All right, good. So, okay, take a deep breath. And imagine us all in a big circle. Let your light bodies be there. Your light body's so big, right? Your soul is huge. I want you to envision yourself as a massive being of light. Good. All right, now we're all big. Now we can really cover this whole airport, all right? Kabul airport in Afghanistan. We sometimes will build pillars in places that are very troubled, and that's really, really supportive and helpful. All right, let's drop down to the gut mind, right? Put your hand on your tummy and rub it around a little. Say hello to your gut and all the bacteria that run your gut, right? And run your body. They're beautiful emissaries of the earth. And so we ask of the earth, what is the energy? I'm asking for us on our behalf, right? What's the energetic that will be the foundation for this pillar of light? And it's actually a really special message. Nature loves you. Nature loves you. The natural world loves you. That's why your body is a symbiotic body full of bacteria and other cool stuff like viruses. Yeah. Nature loves you. Nature loves your energy. Nature loves your electromagnetic field. Nature loves your consciousness. That's why all these cells are continuing every second to become you, to be in you, to be you. That's how that works. Isn't that amazing? Nature loves you. So bring that whole feeling into your gut, and with a deep breath, project it out to the foundation of our pillar in the center of Kabul airport in Afghanistan. And we do it with a deep breath now. Wow, guys, that was explosive. Good job. So all this light came from all of your gut minds and your beautiful beings, bodies of light, right? And it came in really fast, and then it was bright green, and then it turned like bright red, and then it exploded like a big bomb of love. It's so cool, and it's bright, vivid colors, many different colors. Really neat. So I like to psychically tell you what I see when we do this, but you might see something different, which is perfectly fine. We're all different facets. There's no one person who's the same as another in vantage point. And so you might feel it and see it differently than I, and that's okay. Very good. All right, let's come to the heart, right? And I'm asking Source, what's the message from our hearts that we can use to build this pillar, this transmitter of light on the fourth dimension with our imaginations? This is the ending of the fear of death program. So the opposite of that program, what erases that program, is that simply there is no death. Everything is transformation, but also the energy of peace around that, to have a peaceful heart around the energy and power of transformation. So it's two things. It's peace and then the truth, which is all things are transforming all the time. So pull those two things together in your heart, let them merge, the peace around that, the peace when we're finished being afraid of death, right? Good. All right. And now with a deep breath, project it to the center of our pillar. Now. Wow, that was really bright. Wow. I'm very taken aback. So you guys are so powerful. I just love doing these because every time it gets more and more powerful. So we projected this and there was like it looked like a purple crystal, almost like a very clear amethyst. And then it too exploded. And then this massive butterfly of vivid ultraviolet light, like this violet light purple, bluish purple happened. And it was so bright that it actually hurt my eyes while my eyes were shut, looking at it psychically. That's how powerful you are. This thing is incredible. It's like this massive butterfly, which is, of course, the symbol of transformation. How cool is that? Oh my goodness. It feels really, really good. And it's so bright. I can barely look at it psychically. Oh my. Okay. Let's come up to the third eye and the crown, right? And I'm asking Source, what now is our final energy here to support the connecting of humanity to the real internet, right? It's simple. The joy of connection, the joy of connection, the joy of being one with Source. There's so much ecstasy in it. That's why enlightened people are happy no matter what happens, right? Enlightened people like you are working towards are happy all the time. They don't have a reason because they're not connecting their consciousness to anything that will change. They're connecting it to the immobile, pure light of Source. And so they're constantly happy because, and we can have that joy to connect to each other and the Source within one another, and of course to connect to Source itself. Then there is no suffering in that because you're constantly there. So it's that joy that everyone is craving, especially now. But it's a joy that's not attached to anything that changes. It's a joy that is only ever connected to the immobile consciousness of Source. And so just imagine it. Even if you don't have a reference point for it, feel it, imagine it. Let the light build here in your upper dantian. And then for me, it feels white, but it might look different to you. It doesn't matter. Yeah, good. Okay. And then take a deep breath and project it to the top of our pillar. Now. Wow. I just saw the most magnificent rainbow and white light sort of field, like a fountain, pour out of the top of this thing all the way around the world, like really quick. And then it hit me. I'm in Ecuador. So on the other side of the planet from Afghanistan, it hit me in a microsecond, right? And then the light but it made me feel so peaceful just now, extremely peaceful. All right, so we have this incredibly powerful pillar. I think this is my favorite one so far because it's so big and so powerful. It just shows how clear the dimensions are and how, when we do intention work now more than ever, how powerful it really is. How it moves through time and dimensions and space faster now. That means that your inner work can happen faster now. This is great news. This is proof to me that this is the case. That it's never, ever, ever too late for you to keep working towards that oneness, the universal self. And that even now you're being fully supported more than ever by the place and space we're in, by the light and power coming in from the galaxy. You know, that electromagnetic field going into inquiry, into a weakened state, which I don't like calling it a weakened state because it's not exactly, it's just going inward. It allows all this energy from the galaxy and the stars to access us more powerfully than ever. So you are being nourished and bombarded with qualities of light and all sorts of different wavelengths that normally are not here until you're at the end of each age, right? And so that's serving this too, and making it easier for us to build these pillars so that they can have a dramatic effect on consciousness. Good. So let's just meditate just for a moment on this beautiful pillar of light that we've made that's radiating our intention for that real internet, the Indra's net, to be online in all people on this planet, drawing out source to greet the source in us and become one, so that we can evolutionarily take this big, huge leap in consciousness and in physical. Good. It's so bright, I can barely psychically look at it. We've never done a pillar that this is so bright. Cool. Okay, good. All right, let's disconnect ourselves from this pillar, disconnecting from our crown and our third eye, the heart, and the gut with a whole big deep breath and a gratitude to each of you who participated and will participate. Thank you. Very good. Yes, heaven on earth, Jennifer, I agree. This is so beautiful. I'm really proud for us and what we're capable of, my friends. Source can do anything. And you are Source. Thanks for being with me today. We will meet on the last Sunday of September. And I think, let me check. I don't remember which day the equinox is. So we'll be meeting on the 26th of September next. And I believe equinox will have passed. So use that. Yeah. So Linda says 23rd of September is equinox. So I'll be able to give you a report about what happened during equinox, because that particular time, there's always a bit of a shift in consciousness that occurs. And lately in the past year, and as it's happening, these shifts are more and more immense. So I look forward to that, and I hope you'll take advantage of it and spend some good self-inquiry time on that day. And just look for balance, right? Balance comes as you become the universal self as Source. Balance comes naturally then. The personal self struggles with balance and boundaries and preferences and all that, right? But in that enlightened state, balance is available at all moments. And just focus on that as your mantra over this next month, to intend a balanced life, a balanced state, and a healed state, right? To intend that our DNA can be its very best with the service and power of nature and your consciousness, and to intend that all of us can connect to each other easily through our psychic mind, through our feeling mind, and through our gut mind, fully being one, so we can take these big next steps and use as much light and energy and equanimity and neutrality as possible. I love you all so much. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate, especially all the new folks. Thanks for coming so much. I really enjoyed doing this work with you. And I hope you have a beautiful month. I'm always here for you. And I really appreciate your constant efforts. It's truly, truly wonderful and miraculous. Thank you. Namaste, my friends, and bless you. Mwah. We'll talk soon.